Welcome. This is the World Reframed. We are live. We are live on Instagram, and we are live on YouTube and Facebook. But we've got the wrong side on Instagram. That's better. Okay, great. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to talk about a big question in geopolitics around the world, which is what is China and why does Taiwan matter? And that's the big question we were addressing, but we're looking at it through this lens of a small patch of rock, which is similar in size to the US state of Maryland. And it's the heart of an issue so big that China, which is uncontestably one of the new superpowers in the world, or the new superpower in the world, has devoted much of its foreign policy and a significant part of its vast military development to resolving it. So let's start by getting our bearings, because this is a small place with an outside influence in the world. It's an island off the southeastern coast of China, separated from the mainland by the Taiwan Strait, which is about 130 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. To the south, we have the South China Sea, and this location puts Taiwan at the heart of some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. So economically, that gives it an importance. In terms of size, it's quite compact, about 3,600 square kilometers. So that's about the same size as the Netherlands or Belgium or the US state of Maryland. But despite that, it's home to about 23 million people. So that's the same kind of size population as Australia or Florida. It's all packed into a much smaller area. And it punches far above its weight. We talked about its importance in trade, but it ranks among the 20 or top economies in the world by nominal GDP. That puts it ahead of countries like Switzerland or Sweden. And on a per capita basis, it's a high income economy with living standards comparable to Western Europe. However, a real importance economically is about what it makes. The island's the backbones of the world's advanced semiconductor industry. And Taiwanese companies produce the majority of the world's most advanced computer chips, the kind that power smartphones, cars, data centers, and military systems. And just one company, TSMC, manufactured chips that many of the world's biggest tech firms simply couldn't function without. So we're not just talking about a marginal island, we're talking a very densely populated and economically advanced region, which is at the crossroads of global trade and technology. And of course, it's very, very important to China. And so let's try and understand why. To do that, I'm going to invite Li Jianhua from CGCN Europe.
Hi, Duncan, can you hear me?
Hi, Li Jianhua. Yes, I can hear you very well. And the first thing I'd like to ask you is, why is Taiwan so important to China?
Okay, just give me a second because we are broadcasting on two different platforms.
Right.
I think I can hear myself.
I'm getting an echo from you.
Yeah, I get my echo from you too.
Oh, right. Okay. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I'm going to end the stream on Instagram and we'll come back in a minute.
All right.
But Li Jianhua, just tell us quickly, why is Taiwan so important to China?
Oh, Duncan, thank you for having me. I think I can still hear my echo just now. Yeah, but that
should be good now.
Ended. Okay, should be good now. And for China, you know, we are talking about Beijing's perspective. That is why I'm invited today, I think, for us to address some of the issues from Beijing's perspective. And Taiwan has been an inalienable part of China from Beijing's perspective. And it's such an important place, and you have already touched upon some of them. It's a very important shipping route. And also the island is manufacturing advanced chips for all across the world. And today, and the United States just sold $11 billion worth of weapons to Taiwan. I don't think Beijing is happy about it. And there is already some response already. So basically that is this island, if we want to understand the Taiwan question, we need to go back to history. We need to go back to 1912. It's very much of a history lesson, but feel free to stop me if you want me to explain something. And it all started we need to go back to 1912. That was the end of the Imperial China, end of the Qing dynasty, we know. And then after that, the Republic of China, or ROC, it was founded on the Chinese mainland. But back then, the Taiwan island was not part of China because the island was ceded to Japan in 1895 after the First Sino-Japanese War. So basically, it was not part of the discussion yet. And then the reason why Japan wanted to take Taiwan back then was because Taiwan Island, that island was considered very, very important strategically because it sits between China, Japan, and also Southeast Asia. And also it was a very important shipping route, as we said just now. And also it could prove that Japan was a very strong military power. And especially after 1868, the Meiji Revolution that we know. And then in 1921, the Communist Party in China, Chinese Communist Party was founded. So basically, on the Chinese mainland, we could see two sides, two parties: the KMT that overthrew the Qing dynasty in 1912, and then the Communist Party of China in 1921. But the Communist Party back then was not a match because it was still quite weak. It was a fledgling party. But in 1927, the Communist Party started to grow already, and then the KMT and the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, they started to fight each other. It was called the Civil War. And then in 1937, and actually before that in 1931, that Japan invaded China, and then the two parties wanted to work together to fight the Japanese. But after the Japanese was defeated in 1945, the Civil War just resumed between the KMT, the Kuomintang, and the CCP on the Chinese mainland. But in 1949, that was the time that the new China, or the People's Republic of China, was founded, and the KMT was defeated, and they just retreated to the Taiwan island as it is now. But we're talking about Japan because Japan, it took the Taiwan island, as I said just now, in the 19th century, at the end of the 19th century, after its defeat after the Second World War, and Japan just gave all of the territories back to China. So in the Cairo Declaration and the Potsdam Declaration in 1943 and 45, and the allies, including the United States, the United Kingdom, and China, agreed that all of the territories that Japan took from China should be returned to China. But remember the date, it was 1945. It was 4 years before the founding of the People's Republic of China. So it was given to the Republic of China government. It was them. But in 1949, because the Republic of China, or the KMT, was defeated, and then the CCP, or the People's Republic of China, would argue that they have inherited everything. And Japan gave that island, Taiwan Island, to China, and then the CCP, or the People's Republic of China, just inherited everything. And then in 1971, so if we're talking about the recognition in the international community, the United Nations passed the resolution 2758, that is the most referenced, which recognized the People's Republic of China as the only lawful representative of the all of China. And then the delegation from the Republic of China were just expelled from the United Nations. So basically, that is the history, why Taiwan is so important, how it all started, and how it ends being where we are right now.
Yeah, and that history is very important. I think it's maybe difficult for some people to take in because it's not something that gets taught in schools in Europe, I think probably in the US either. But for people in China, this is really, really key to their identity, right?
Yeah. It is key to, I think, the Chinese education about that part of history, how it started and how it ends being where we are right now at this point.
And you talked about the 1970 and the UN recognition, which is very, very important to China, right? And it has this one China policy. I think in China they call it the one China principle. And this has been at the heart of its diplomatic efforts. And the UN, as you say, endorsed this. Most countries around the world recognize this in some way because China basically won't have diplomatic relations with them unless they accept that this is China and that Taiwan is not a country, but Taiwan is part of China.
Yeah,
But we've had this big spat recently with Japan. Can
yeah.
you just give us an idea of why that's been such a big issue and why that's really creating enormous tensions in the region?
Because it was in November last month, basically, and it was the first prime minister, sitting prime minister of Japan, in an official setting, who said the contingency of Taiwan is the contingency of Japan. Basically, it insinuates that Japan could send the troops overseas to aid Taiwan if there is anything, any conflict between the Chinese mainland and Taiwan. And then, so Beijing was infuriated because of that, because this is the first time, as I said. And then in 1972, we need to go back to history again, because Beijing was so infuriated and then told the world many times that we need to look at the 1972 Sino-Japanese joint communique, but what it's really about. It was signed in Beijing in 1972, and if we quote Article 2 and Article 3 of the communique, just to quote that verbatim. So in Article 2, it says that the government of Japan recognizes the government of the People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of the whole of China. And in Article 3, it says the government of the People's Republic of China reiterates that Taiwan is an inalienable part of the territory of the People's Republic of China, and the government of Japan fully understands and respects that. Basically, that is what Japan says, that the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government of the whole of China. And then what infuriated China, I think also Korea and Southeast Asia more, is the potential resumption of Japan's militarism. Because of the Second World War, Japan invaded China and Korea and also Southeast Asia. So it was always the historical grievances in that part of the world and think, okay, if that returns, it could be a disaster for the world again. That is what they think. And then, so we need to understand that in Japan's constitution in 1947, particularly its Article 9, it said the country was prohibited from sending its troops for combat purposes. And we know Japan's military forces are called self-defense forces, or SDF. It was created in 1954. It was just a few years after its constitution was written. And then, so it said that its forces could only be used for self-defense purposes and strictly within or immediately around Japanese territories. So basically, after the Second World War, because Japan was defeated along with ally, that was Nazi Germany, and Japan said that it would never send its troops overseas for combat purposes, basically. But we've seen some changes, especially in the 1990s and 2000s, and especially in 2015. That's when the Shinzo Abe government said, passed the new security laws, saying that the government will allow limited collective self-defense, enabling Japan to assist an ally if Japan's survival is deemed at risk. So Beijing has this huge row with Japan because it is the first time that Japan is suggesting that it may send troops overseas again by citing collective self-defense. But the thing is, you have to justify that Japan's own survival is at risk. So that is how the whole row
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said might happen if China launched a military intervention in Taiwan, which China has always reserved the right to do. They've always said it's not their first option. It's not really where they want to go. But they have also said we don't reject it.
Beijing's argument, the reason why Beijing was so infuriated together with Southeast Asia and Korea this time was you have to justify that Japan is at risk, its own survival is at risk if there is a military intervention across the Taiwan Strait. And from Beijing, if Beijing took the initiative, and then you have to justify that. If not, and then they are just worried that this militarism could be resumed again from Japan. And it's largely because of historical grievances during the Second World War.
Yeah, because those scars run very deep, don't they, from some of the behavior of the Japanese troops in China. And I think from Beijing's perspective, China's never really properly made amends for that perhaps in the
Yeah.
same way that Germany has here in Europe.
That is what Beijing has been saying exactly. It's like because the Japanese didn't really formally apologize for their action during the Second World War, and this has led to serious diplomatic de-escalation, we have to say, and because trade has borne the brunt apparently, because Japan last year alone in 2024 exported about 120 billion US dollars worth of products to China, and China is taking action. And it's already Beijing has halted some imports of seafood, and we've also seen tourism affected because the Chinese tourists are advised not to travel to Japan right after that. And also, Japan is probably facing a pandaless tourism because the two last pandas are returning to China in January 2026, and then they don't know if there will be any replacements anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, panda's part of China's foreign policy, and China's foreign policy very, very much tied to this one China principle. I just wanted to mention, because it's important, we've talked about China's perspective. Obviously, the perspective of Taiwan can be quite different, and the government there not recognized by Beijing. But officially, according to their constitution, they also have a kind of one China principle, where they think that China, PRC, or the mainland China and Taiwan should be one country. They just see it the other way around. But I think in their public statements, they're very cautious. They have a kind of policy of ambiguity where they don't really want to talk about independence. They don't really want to be vocal about this subject because they know that it would just cause big tensions and potentially a backlash. But I wanted to ask you, Jianhua, from the perspective of the government in Beijing, what happens next with regard to Taiwan? What do they want to see going forward in the next few years?
There is a lot of speculation that Beijing could launch military intervention across the Taiwan Strait, or, there is a lot of going on at this point, especially that we have lots of conflicts already all across the world. And then there is this fear that if it happens, there could be another world war, I'm afraid. But Beijing has never said that it will do anything anytime or imminently or what will happen. But I think at the end of the day, they have been talking about the reunification, but through peaceful or not peaceful measures, we don't know, because Beijing has been said repeatedly, starting in 1993, the White Paper on Taiwan, that they would not forsake the use of force if it comes to that day. But we don't know. But both sides, I think, especially peoples, like to maintain it as it is right now, because no one really wants any conflict. But I think from Beijing's perspective, mostly it's because Beijing is really concerned about foreign interference, because according to the one China principle, is about there is only one China in the world, and Taiwan is a domestic issue, not an international one. And Beijing also concerned that the sales of arms to Taiwan, and just today the United States had just sold, as I said at the opening, that 11 billion US dollars worth of weapons to Taiwan. But in 1979, again, the history lesson again, and the United States said that recognized the PRC government as the sole legal government, and also it said it will gradually reduce its arms sales to Taiwan. That is what really the big scourge between China and America at this point. It's always over Taiwan, especially its arms sales.
Jianhua, thank you so much for joining us. I know people can see more from you. Even you're on this afternoon on TV on CGTN Europe, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's
so they
about
can see
a
you
different
this afternoon. Tune into CGTN Europe on YouTube, or follow them on Facebook, Instagram. Also, I will be on Global South World. So any more you want to hear about what's happening in Africa, Asia, Latin America, make sure you follow us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.